When the police took her away on that cold and windy December night, I knew my best friend was completely gone, but I was sure that she wasn't always like this. Our neighborhood was small, and everyone knew each other when Amelia and her parents moved in 10 years ago. They bought the 2-story house next to my parents. It was just the usual suburban house painted white, with fences, a backyard, and a front lawn. I liked Amelia almost immediately. In my 5-year-old brain, she was the prettiest girl in the whole neighborhood, even prettier than Marie from the house opposite to mine. She had blonde hair, light brown eyes, and a smile that just lit up her surroundings. The first time I saw her, she had on a white t-shirt and a blue skirt with white polka dots. Her family had just arrived, and she got out of the Toyota, holding a ball that was as large as her face. Before I could steal another look, her parents had hurried her into the house. I didn't get to know her name until 2 weeks later. I was excluded from the soccer game of the boys in the neighborhood, and was sitting at the front lawn to my house when she came and sat next to me. "Can I sit here?" she asked in a soft voice. I was so shy my face felt hot. I stammered a yes before turning my eyes to the game. "Why aren't you playing?" "They don't want me, I'm too short." "What's your name, by the way?" "Tim. What's yours?" "I'm Amelia." "Tim, you want to go and ask them again?" I didn't even get a chance to say no before Amelia dragged me by the arms to the group of boys playing. I still remember Hughes, the biggest boy of the bunch, staring Amelia down, but she stood her ground and he looked away in embarrassment. That afternoon we got to play soccer. Amelia was popular throughout elementary school. She was athletic, pretty, and smart. She got good grades and was always the teacher's favorite. She got taller and prettier while I was a scrawny kid that barely passed most subjects. We couldn't be more different, but somehow we were still friends. When we were 8, Amelia got a little puppy named Bob. Bob was a quirky golden retriever that loved humans and chasing his own tail. We immediately became a trio. Me, Mia, she liked to be called this, and Bob would often explore the thin woods around our neighborhood after school. On one day like that, we were playing by a small stream. I was walking over a dead log that acted like a bridge between the banks and slipped. I hit my ankle on some rocks and a dull pain flared up in my left leg. I tried to stand up, but my ankle couldn't take any pressure, and soon I slipped into the stream, the water wetting my entire lower half. Mia appeared then, the light shining down and around her, forming a silver lining. She held out her hand and dragged me out of the stream. She found a dead branch nearby, broke it to size, and told me to lean on it. Bob was fluttering around us both, and he gave my ankle a good lick. I thanked her and turned away to hide my blushing. We headed home, but made it halfway before the branch broke. Mia took my arm around her shoulder and helped me home. "I think I can walk home. It only hurts a little," I told her. "You can lean on me. That looks like it hurts a lot. We're besties now. You can depend on me, you know, and I'll depend on you," she replied. At that moment, my aching ankle and stinging scrapes felt like they didn't hurt at all. The warm summer sun shone down on us, and the air smelled of old wood and warm grass. The road home was quiet, save for the panting of Bob and the sound of our shoes on the concrete. High school came in a hurry. Before we knew it, we were in different classes already. Mia made captain of the girls' soccer team and was consistently one of the top students at our school. As for me, I found my passion in English literature, as was still largely the same kid that was rejected from soccer, though I started to grow taller than her. That was around the time when my sleeping problem started. I often went to bed at 11 p.m., a habit that I had since starting primary school. I would read a chapter or two from my favorite book, and then hit the bed soon after. But for some reason, things started to change. I would sit at my desk and invariably start to fall asleep at around 10:30. I wasn't the only one. My parents talked to each other about how they often fall asleep around that time too. My dad was in the middle of filing our taxes one night and just fell asleep right at his desk. My mother would sleep midway through her nightly care routine. We eventually chalked it up to seasonal temperature changes and adjusted our routine to finish sooner. My family wasn't the only one. When I went to Mia's house to do homework with her, she talked about how her entire family started to fall asleep at the same time too. It's just seasonal weather. My family got that too. We just adjusted our routines to finish up the night sooner, I told her. Guess so. Is it bedbug season too because I just got this? She showed me her arm. There were several small marks around the vein in her inner elbow, the vein that doctors often inject into. They were very small and hard to see unless one got close. I said nothing and just finished my homework with her. Then the dream started. I didn't remember any of them at first, but gradually I started to recall one or two familiar details from my dream during recess, or sometimes during class when the lessons get too hard. Then eventually I started to remember a lot of details from my dreams. At school, things weren't looking much better. Mia got in the eyes of the boys from both the soccer and other sport teams. She had to turn down love letters, surprise flowers, and outright confessions. Because we were best friends, I'm often the deliverer of these confessions, and often the first person to see the tired and exasperated look on her face when she had to turn down the love confession of the week. That also meant that I was occasionally hazed, especially by the boys from the soccer and football team. They would yell out slurs, push me into my locker, or trip me during lunch break. It got so bad that Mia had to tell off a couple of the boys to leave me alone, or she would get a teacher involved. Our trips to the forests near our neighborhood started to become less and less frequent. We were both busy with schoolwork and our own hobbies, but we still visited each other's house to do homework and talked about life at school. Then one day, Mia knocked the door to my house, tears in her eyes and blood on her hands. I immediately ran to her, afraid that she was wounded. There was so much blood. "What happened? Are you hurt? Why is there so much blood?" I asked her and lifted her arms to search around her for an open wound. Then it hit me that we were no longer kids, and that what I was doing was overstepping certain boundaries. Just then, she pushed her face into my chest. I felt her warm tears flow down my t-shirt. Unconsciously, my arms wrapped around her and hugged her. Mia took a while but eventually calmed down. She told me that Bob was hit by a speeding car as they were crossing a road, and the wheels of the car tore through his body, opening his stomach. Mia carried Bob all the way home before he died in her arms. We buried Bob in a spot below the shade of the apple tree in her backyard. I sat with Mia that entire afternoon trying to console her. 2 weeks later, Mia told me that she and her mom were going to volunteer for an animal shelter. She would also try out a vegetarian diet. "I don't want to cause more suffering," she told me. Around fall, our neighborhood took part in a study about sleep. The scientists said it was a longitudinal study on the effects of nature on our sleep pattern. We were considered one of the prime locations for good sleep due to the surrounding woods, the fresh air, and lack of noise pollution. We would measure the time that we slept and do a self-report on the sleep quality and what we experienced. The whole neighborhood was excited. That study was probably the most attention we got in decades. Then the dreams got worse. They became violent and at times hyper-realistic. I could even control how I acted in the dreams and would sometimes confuse between dreaming and reality. Mia had the same problems, but it seemed she had it much worse than I do. She talked about her dreams in vivid details, about how some days she dreamed that her hands were all red with blood. Losing Bob must have really gotten to her. She started to have this really tired look on her face, and her grades started to tank. Her parents wanted to put her through therapy, but Mia wouldn't have it. "I didn't want to feel like a lab rat," she said. The bed bug bites were getting worse too. Now there were nearly a dozen small dots on her arm. There was another problem, of course. I realized that I liked Mia. No, I loved her. It came in the form of flutters every time we sat together. That desire for her to rest her head on my shoulder when we talked about our problems. That strong urge to hold her hand when we were out in public. But I didn't dare to say anything. What we had was beautiful. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, I would ruin everything. So I kept my love hidden. Every time I saw a boy tell Mia how much he liked her, Every time she opened her locker to flowers and love letters, my heart sank a little, afraid that she would one day say yes. After all the emotional torment, our family and Mia's decided to have a trip together. One of her relatives had several family-sized cabins right next to a secluded spot in Lake Willoughby. We rented 2 for the weekend. In the evening, we held a small campfire and ate barbecue. The cool smell of the pine forest mingled with the crackling smell of burning branches and the mouth-watering scent of grilled meat and eggplants. It was a memorable night, filled with laughter and memory. Our parents went to bed early and it was only me and Mia left. She looked at me for a good while, and her eyes were earnest, as if she wanted to say something. Eventually she looked away and we chatted through the evening. "I've been having nightmares about my Uncle Steve," she told me. "Your Uncle Steve?" "Yeah, the one that drove while drunk and killed someone in an accident. He was locked up in a correctional facility in Newport. You remember, right?" "You went with me," she answered. "Mia, I don't remember any Uncle Steve. Are you sure you're just not dreaming him up?" "Oh, could have sworn I went with you to see him. He even told me he liked you." The rest of the evening went on without any event, but those 2 nights near the lake were the best sleep that we had for a long time. Mia thought so too, because when I saw her again the next day, she looked just like the Mia of before, lively and energetic. Her bedbug bites started healing too. When my parents talked with Mia's parents the next day, they all talked about how refreshing it was to sleep near the lake. We packed up to return home and I wished we could stay every weekend. Back home, the scientists gave us the initial results of the research on our sleep. We were among the neighborhoods with the longest sleep duration of all the areas that they researched, but our sleep quality was the lowest. Many of our neighbors had the same problem that we did. They would invariably start to fall asleep at around 10:30, but their sleep was never restful. Maybe being home just made her miss Bob again, because at school she seemed really exhausted most of the time. One day she was walking with me and started to put her hand on the wall to support herself. "What's wrong?" I asked her. "Nothing, I'm just a little dizzy," she said. The people walking past us gave us worried looks, but I assured them that things were fine. Mia rushed to the bathroom in a hurry and dropped a pink notebook. I picked it up and waited outside to give it to her, but it was time for the next period, so I put it in my backpack and planned to return it to her later. When school was over, I waited for Mia at the gates, but she didn't show up. I thought she must have gone to volunteer at the pet shelter and walked home. I was very curious of what was in the notebook, and as soon as I got home, I opened it. I read the first page. It was her diary. I closed the book, angry with myself for having invaded something so private. But after tremendous struggle, I eventually opened the notebook and started reading. A lot of the diary was about her day-to-day, how sad she was that Bob died, how she was coping with his passing. One entry caught my eyes. It was the day we stayed at the lakeside cabins. She marked it with a heart. "Looked at Tim today. I wanted to tell him I like him a lot, way more than just friends. But I'm afraid that if I tell him and it didn't work out, our friendship would be over and awkward. What to do? Why didn't he say anything? I thought he liked me too." Reading those lines made my heart jump for joy. It felt like hitting the lottery. It was exhilarating. But the later entries made me worried. She talked about having visions of her hands bloodied and her parents' corpses in front of her. She wrote about memories that I didn't even know she had, all of them dreary or violent. One of them involved having killed another dog and buried it next to Bob so that he wouldn't be alone. I couldn't believe my eyes. Mia was definitely not the type to do that. She said she wasn't sure which was dream and which was reality anymore. I immediately went to her backyard to check. No dig mark. The grass surrounding Bob's grave was still green. When she got home that night, I gave her the diary. "Did you read it?" she asked me. "No, what did you write in it?" I lied. "Oh, just stuff. I wrote a poem for you in there, she said, her eyes mischievous and knowing. "I didn't see any poem." I regretted the words as soon as I said them out loud. "So you did read it. Did you read to that part?" she asked and moved closer. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know which part," I answered. You're such a dork. Anyway, it's been a while since we hung out. Want to meet up at the forest this Saturday afternoon? I nodded and tried my best to keep calm. Inside, I was screaming with joy. That night, I looked out the window to the sky and the stars. They were unusually bright. At around 10, a van rolled up into our neighborhood and started making rounds. I didn't pay it much thought. They must have been people who got lost. I thought about Mia and the upcoming date. I took out Romeo and Juliet and wrote a couple of pickup lines, but they sounded so stupid and bizarre that I tore up the paper. The later days at school were especially tough for Mia. She always showed up tired. Her dreams were so bad that she failed a couple of tests. She told me that she couldn't concentrate and was fearing going to sleep, because as soon as she hit the bed, the vision returned, that of her parents lying in a puddle of blood and her hands before her, bloodied. She talked about memories that I didn't even know she had, like punching one of the soccer boys for catcalling her. She even forgot about Bob, asking me who's Bob, when I had to remind her that it was her dog that she loved so much. She had this vacant stare that made me worried. Saturday afternoon came and I waited for her in the forest. I looked at my watch. It was 10 a.m., then 11 a.m., noon, then 1 p.m. I walked around the forest and took out my phone to call her. I thought it was some kind of prank, but calling her now would probably ruin her surprise for me, so I waited. Eventually, I had to go home after 3 p.m. When I got home, Mia was standing at her house's front lawn, watering them. She looked like her mind was in another place. I asked her if she remembered inviting me to a trip in the forest today. She told me she couldn't remember saying that. Disappointed and angry, I told her that she was heartless and went home. I was heartbroken but too young to drink alcohol. I opened the cupboard. There were a bunch of coffee pouches. In my anger, I took 5 of them and poured them all in the same cup and just drank. Several hours later, my hands got all jittery and my head felt like someone was jolting it with electricity. In the evening, I looked out to the windows again towards Mia's house. I realized that I must have been too hard on Mia, seeing that she was having so much problem with her sleep. I planned to apologize to her the next morning. I turned off the light in my room and stared out at the stars. Their presence calmed me. At around 10, the same van as before made a round in our neighborhood again. This time, though, it stopped near my house. That was when I saw the top of the van open and a kind of contraption with antennas slowly emerging from inside. It made several full circles and I started feeling drowsy, but the caffeine in my body was just too strong. I ducked down and observed. After around 15 minutes, the van opened, and from it, 4 people walked out. 2 of them started making rounds around our neighborhood, and the remaining 2 entered Mia's house. I was so scared I forgot to do what I should have done earlier, calling the police. After a while, the 2 men stood right beneath my house and chatted. I'm telling you, there's no need to worry. These people are out cold. We've been doing it for months. They don't even know. This guy got top shelf stuff. Very high quality vodka, gin and whiskey. The boss said we need to be extra alert tonight, the other guy answered. Oh, screw the boss. We've only got tonight until the project is closed. I'm telling you, these drinks are way above our paycheck. So you in or not? All right, but only for a short while. And with that, the 2 men made for one of the neighbors' houses. I slowly walked downstairs. My parents were fast asleep. I opened the door and stepped outside. The night was cold. Chilly wind blew on my face, making my entire body shiver. I rubbed my hands together and put them on my face to keep warm while I walked to the van and opened the back door. Inside the van were a lot of screens with green letters. I stepped in and took a look at them. There were a lot of figures and charts that I didn't understand. There was also a small rectangular suitcase that was labeled backup. I opened one and inside were several syringes with amber liquid. On a small desk beneath one large screen was a bunch of documents. I took one and read it. Project MK Hyper. Diagnosis. The subject was observed to behave accordingly to treatment. There's a high probability that the subject will complete the imprinted task in redacted. Recommend extra dose of redacted for increased probability. I felt cold. My heart sank to my stomach and my hands just started shaking. Then I suddenly recalled that 2 men walked into Mia's house. I wondered who the subject that they talked about was. I really hoped that it wasn't Mia. I rushed out of the van and into my house. I had to bite my hands to keep them from trembling when I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I want to report a home invasion. And I told them all about the van, about what I read, and about what I was worried would happen. After a long silence, the operator just told me to quit joking and to watch fewer conspiracy movies before hanging up. Desperate, I went to wake my parents, but they were in such deep sleep I couldn't do anything. Then I heard car doors being opened. I looked out the window. The 2 men had returned from Mia's house and their partners were drunkenly singing on their way back to the van. I heard one man telling off the 2 drunks before shoving them into the van and speeding away. As the van left, I felt the imposing drowsiness disappear. I went to my room to put on a coat before going to Mia's house. But there was a blood-curdling scream soon after. It was so loud and guttural that it woke up even my parents. Other neighbors started turning on their lights too. After that initial scream, there was a sound of crashing furniture, and then another scream, louder this time, more bodied, as if in great pain. It came from the direction of Mia's house. We rushed outside and my dad was faster. He came inside the house and then screamed. My mother walked in and she collapsed on the ground, her hands over her mouth and tears streaming out. Other neighbors were also curious and they started gathering outside of the house. I slowly walked in, praying that it wasn't Mia that was hurt. My prayer was answered because when I walked in, Mia was holding a kitchen knife. Around the house were signs of struggle, and in front of Mia were the corpses of her parents, blood oozing out from multiple stab wounds. Mia was sitting there, a vacant look on her face. "What did you do, Mia? How could you do this?" my dad asked, his voice trembling. "I had to finish the mission," she said, showing no emotion. My dad had to slowly approach Mia and take the knife from her hand. It took a while. It felt like she could jump at us any moment. But as my dad approached, her hand went limp, and he easily took the knife from her. The police arrived soon after. They took Mia in. The case was nationally televised. "Teenage in grief commits homicide against her parents," they wrote on the title. On the day that the court case hearing happened, I was there too. The verdict was that Emilia was criminally insane, or crazy, as people would later talk about her. When asked why she had to murder her parents, she only said that it was her mission. The court decided that due to her age and the fact that she was diagnosed to be mentally unfit to serve her sentence, she would be sent to Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital, where she would likely spend the rest of her life. I didn't get the chance to talk to her one last time before she went away. When we got home, I waited until the police were gone, ducked under the crime scene tape, and entered Mia's house. I climbed the stairs to Emilia's room. On her desk was the notebook I found earlier. I took it and held it in my arms as I got home. It was the object of memory, of the childhood we shared, and of how wonderful she was as a person. Emilia wasn't crazy. She was made the subject of some twisted experiment. But there was no way I could prove that to anyone. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I had been having nightmares. I would dream that my hands were bloody, holding a knife, and that my parents' corpses were right in front of me. I had been having these memories about them screaming and yelling and sometimes even throwing stuff at me. I felt that was odd because my parents were normally very gentle. But when I saw tiny marks that seemed like bug bites, I knew I was next.